David stood frozen, a mop in one hand and a maid's apron tied awkwardly around his waist. His once confident posture was replaced by a heavy slump, his eyes fixed on the floor. Across from him, Sophia stood tall, her business suit immaculate, exuding the authority of someone who carried the weight of an entire household on her shoulders. With an icy tone that betrayed the warmth they once shared, Sophia handed him a mop and said, "You want to stay here? Then earn it." Her words cut through the silence like a blade, leaving David reeling. How had it come to this? Once the cornerstone of their family's success, he now felt like an outsider in his own home, a man struggling to find his place in a world that had shifted beneath his feet. But life has a way of testing the strongest bonds, and was their storm. Highly hit that subscribe button and join us as we unravel this unforgettable tale of love, resilience, and transformation. David and Sophia were the epitome of success, a power couple whose lives seemed nothing short of perfect. David, a high-achieving corporate professional, was known for his strategic brilliance and unshakable confidence. Every day, he walked into his corner office in the city with purpose, his tailored suits and commanding presence leaving a trail of admiration wherever he went. Sophia, on the other hand, was a self-made entrepreneur with an unparalleled work ethic. She had built her African beauty empire from the ground up, blending tradition and innovation to create a brand celebrated across the continent. Her business not only thrived, but also became a source of inspiration to many women dreaming of their own entrepreneurial success. Together, they lived a vibrant life filled with love and ambition. Weekends were spent on lavish family outings, their two children laughing as they splashed in pools at luxury resorts or explored bustling markets hand in hand. Their home, a sprawling mansion in an affluent neighborhood, was always alive with joy, laughter, and plans for an even brighter future. But life has a way of testing even the strongest foundations. The winds began to shift unexpectedly when David's company announced a sudden corporate restructuring. Within weeks, his high-paying position was dissolved, leaving him stunned and directionless. What had once been a carefully orchestrated life now felt like a house of cards collapsing under the weight of uncertainty. David's last day at work came with a quiet finality, his belongings packed into a single box as he walked out of the office he had called his second home. As he drove back to the life he had built with Sophia, his mind raced with questions. How would he tell her? How would they adjust? When David shared the devastating news of his job loss, Sophia tried to be supportive at first. "We'll get through this together," she had said, though her voice carried an undertone of unease. With her thriving beauty empire, Sophia stepped in to fill the financial void, seamlessly taking over as the family's sole provider. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, David struggled to find a new job. The rejection emails and unanswered applications began to chip away at his confidence. He spent hours hunched over his laptop, searching for opportunities, but his industry seemed to have moved on without him. The once assured man who used to make bold decisions in the boardroom now felt adrift, his purpose slipping further out of reach. Sophia, meanwhile, carried the full weight of the family's financial burdens. Early mornings bled into late nights as she managed her growing business, attended meetings, and ensured that bills were paid on time. While she tried to stay patient, the cracks in her composure began to show. Resentment brewed quietly at first, then steadily grew louder in her mind. Each time she returned home to find David on the couch or absorbed in yet another fruitless job search, her frustration mounted. "I'm out there doing everything to keep this family afloat, and you're just waiting," she muttered under her breath one evening, her words cutting through the silence like a knife. The tipping point came one Saturday morning. Sophia, juggling a conference call on her phone while preparing for a business event, glanced at the sink piled high with unwashed dishes and the laundry basket overflowing in the corner. She turned to David, her face stern, and said, "If you're not contributing financially, then you need to handle things here. I can't do it all." David's initial shock quickly gave way to quiet acceptance. "If this is what the family needs," he replied softly, nodding. Without a word of protest, he donned an apron and rolled up his sleeves. The shift in dynamics was complete. Sophia had taken charge as the breadwinner, while David became the caretaker of their home. Yet, beneath the surface, the unspoken tension between them grew. For Sophia, the pressure of carrying the family alone began to harden her once gentle demeanor. For David, the transition from a high-powered career to a life of domesticity felt like the slow erosion of his identity. And so, the house became a quiet battleground where each unspoken word and lingering glance told a story of roles reversed, hearts bruised, and a love put to the ultimate test. As time went on, the tension between David and Sophia reached new heights. For Sophia, the pressure of being the sole breadwinner transformed into frustration, which she often unleashed on David. Her once supportive words were replaced by harsh commands, and the boundaries between partnership and power began to blur. It started with small remarks, comments about the dust on the shelves or the dishes left unwashed. But soon, Sophia's tone shifted entirely. She didn't just ask David to do the chores, she barked orders as though he were a hired servant. "David, the floor isn't going to sweep itself. Stop standing around like you're on a vacation," she yelled one morning, tossing a broom in his direction. David, ever composed, quietly picked up the broom and started sweeping, his jaw tight but his voice silent. The tasks grew more demeaning as the days passed. Cooking, cleaning, mopping, even washing Sophia's personal items. Nothing was off limits. Sophia seemed to relish the control she held, her tone sharp and dismissive. For David, it was a daily exercise in swallowing his pride, his dignity slowly eroding with each passing day. But the most humiliating moment came one afternoon when Sophia invited her friends over. The women lounged in the living room, laughing and sipping drinks, their conversation a symphony of privilege and success. David quietly kept to the kitchen, knowing that his presence would only provoke Sophia. "David!" Sophia's voice rang out suddenly, loud enough to make her friends pause. "Bring us drinks, now!" David emerged from the kitchen, carrying a tray of beverages, his steps steady despite the weight of the moment. As he placed the glasses on the table, Sophia's eyes narrowed. "You call this hospitality?" she snapped, shaking her head. "Go back and get us something to snack on. And hurry up, stop moving so slowly like an old man." Her friends erupted in laughter, their amused glances darting between Sophia and David. Most of them seemed entertained by the spectacle, but one of the women, a soft-spoken friend named Ada, sat quietly, her expression troubled. As David returned to the kitchen, Sophia continued, her voice loud enough for him to hear. "Honestly, I don't even know how I ended up with someone so useless. He can't even run a house properly, let alone provide for it." The laughter grew louder, but Ada finally spoke up, her tone firm. "Sophia, I think you're going too far. He's your husband, not a servant. This isn't right." The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Sophia brushed off Ada's words with a dismissive wave of her hand, but for a brief moment, her confident exterior faltered. Meanwhile, David stood in the kitchen, his hands gripping the counter as he fought back the sting of humiliation. In that moment, he resolved to endure, not for himself, but for the sake of his children, and the hope that someday the tide would turn. As the days turned into weeks, the weight of humiliation bore heavier on David's shoulders. Sophia's treatment of him had grown increasingly cruel, her demands pushing the boundaries of his patience and dignity. For Sophia, this was about asserting control in a world where she felt burdened by responsibility. For David, it was a slow unraveling of his sense of self. One evening, as the children slept and the house was quiet, Sophia called out from the laundry room. "David, come here!" Her voice was sharp, carrying the tone of an order rather than a request. David entered the room, his expression weary but calm. Sophia stood beside a pile of laundry, holding up a bundle of her intimate clothing, bras and panties mixed in with the rest. "You didn't finish the laundry," she said, her eyes narrowing. "I've done everything else, Sophia," David replied, his voice steady but strained. "Can you take care of this part?" Sophia scoffed, her arms crossing. "Are you serious? You're in this house all day, doing nothing that I don't tell you to do. If you think you're above this, you're wrong." David clenched his fists, his pride screaming against the indignity. "I can't, Sophia. There's a line, and this crosses it." Her eyes flared with anger as she stepped closer. "A line? You think you have the right to draw lines here? You're living in my house, eating my food, surviving on my money. If you don't want to do this, there's the door. Go out there and fend for yourself." David's heart sank at her words. The thought of leaving his children and walking into a world where he had no job and no support was unbearable. He looked into Sophia's eyes, searching for even a trace of the woman he once knew, the one who had loved and respected him. But all he saw was frustration and disdain. Tears welled up in his eyes as he reached for the bundle of clothing, His hands trembled as he carried it to the sink, the lump in his throat growing heavier with every step. With each piece he washed, his sense of self-worth diminished further, his tears mingling with the soapy water. In the solitude of that moment, David's mind raced with questions. How had it come to this? How could the love they once shared have turned into such bitterness? The man who once commanded boardrooms now stood in the shadows of his own home, broken and humiliated, washing the dirty underwear of his wife. How low he had fallen. The days dragged on for David, filled with endless chores and constant insults from Sophia. Each task he completed seemed to come with a fresh wave of criticism. But amidst the chaos and humiliation, David found an unexpected solace: cooking. It started with simple meals for the children, a way to brighten their days and give them a sense of normalcy in the strained atmosphere of their home. As time passed, he began experimenting with recipes, blending flavors and techniques he'd picked up from his travels during his corporate days. Slowly, cooking transformed from a chore into a passion. The kitchen became his sanctuary, a place where he could create and escape the harsh reality of his circumstances. Not only did he find joy in the process, but he also discovered a natural talent for running the household efficiently. Everything from meal planning to organizing the children's schedules became second nature to him, bringing a sense of purpose to his otherwise fractured life. One evening, after putting the children to bed, David sat in front of his laptop, his mind racing with an idea. What if he shared his experiences with others? What if there were other men or women facing similar struggles who could learn from his journey? With newfound determination, he started a blog titled The Resilient Homemaker. Through heartfelt posts, he wrote about his daily life, sharing tips on cooking, household management, and finding dignity in difficult situations. To his surprise, his words resonated with people far and wide. His blog began to gain traction, comments pouring in from readers who found inspiration in his resilience. Some praised his cooking techniques, while others related deeply to his struggles and admired his strength. But not everyone in David's world celebrated his newfound success. One evening, Sophia stumbled upon the blog while scrolling through her phone. Her eyes widened as she realized what David had been doing. Instead of seeing his effort as a triumph, she saw it as yet another failure. "Messing around on the internet while I'm out working," she snapped, storming into the kitchen where David was preparing dinner. Her tone was venomous. "Is this what you do all day? Pretend to be productive online while I carry the weight of this family on my back?" David opened his mouth to explain, to share the pride he felt in the positive impact his blog was having. But before he could utter a word, Sophia's anger erupted. "You're nothing but lazy," she yelled, her voice echoing through the room. In a moment of unrestrained frustration, she raised her hand and delivered a sharp slap across his face. The sound of the slap hung in the air as David stood there, stunned. His hand instinctively rose to his cheek, but he didn't say a word. He didn't move. He didn't cry. He was too shocked to react, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. Sophia, breathing heavily, glared at him for a moment before turning on her heel and walking away. The door to their bedroom slammed shut, leaving David alone in the quiet kitchen. As the sting of the slap lingered on his cheek, David's thoughts swirled. He felt the sharp sting of humiliation, not just from Sophia's actions, but from the realization of how far their relationship had fallen. His blog continued to grow, his audience expanding with every post. Each new reader, each comment of encouragement became a reminder that his story mattered, that he was more than the insults thrown at him or the roles forced upon him. For years, Sophia had carried the weight of being the sole provider for her family, priding herself on the success of her African beauty empire. Her brand, once a shining example of innovation and excellence, began to face the challenges of an evolving market. Competitors emerged with cutting-edge products, and shifting consumer preferences left Sophia struggling to keep her business afloat. At first, she pushed harder, taking on longer hours and micromanaging every detail of her company. She ignored the warning signs, the declining sales, the mounting operational costs, and the growing dissatisfaction among her employees. But the cracks in her carefully constructed world became impossible to ignore when her company posted its worst quarterly results in years. One evening, Sophia sat alone in her office, her desk buried under stacks of financial reports and overdue invoices. The numbers blurred before her eyes as a wave of exhaustion and despair washed over her. She clenched her fists, her normally poised demeanor giving way to a vulnerability she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. The phone rang, breaking the silence. It was Ada, the same friend who had once spoken up against Sophia's treatment of David. Sophia hesitated before answering, her voice shaky as she greeted her friend. "You don't sound like yourself," Ada said gently. "What's going on?" Sophia hesitated, fighting back tears, but the dam broke and the words came tumbling out. "It's all falling apart, Ada. The business, the family, everything. I thought I could handle it, but I can't." Ada listened patiently as Sophia poured out her heart. "I feel like I've been carrying this weight for so long, and it's crushing me. I resented David for not stepping up, for not being the man he used to be. But now I realize I'm not the woman I used to be either." Her voice cracked as she admitted, "I hate the person I've become. The anger, the control, it's not me. I took it all out on David and now I'm losing the one thing I thought I could control, my business." Ada's response was firm but compassionate. "Sophia, you've been trying to carry everything alone. Maybe it's time to stop seeing help as a weakness. David's strength didn't disappear. It's still there, but you need to let him in." Sophia sat in silence after the call ended, Ada's words echoing in her mind. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to acknowledge the toll her choices had taken, not just on David, but on herself. She had built walls to protect her pride, but those walls had only isolated her from the very people who could help her. Tears streamed down her face as she finally let herself feel the full weight of her pain and regret. It was a moment of breaking, but also a moment of clarity. Sophia realized that if she wanted to save her business and her family, she would have to find a way to mend the damage she had caused, starting with David. The tension between David and Sophia had been simmering for years, unspoken frustrations and unhealed wounds festering beneath the surface. But on this particular evening, the pressure finally boiled over. It began with something small, a disagreement about the children's school schedules. But the conversation quickly escalated into a heated argument, years of resentment spilling out into the open. "You're always criticizing me," David said, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and pain. "Nothing I do is ever good enough for you." Sophia, standing with her arms crossed, fired back. "Maybe if you actually tried harder, I wouldn't have to do everything myself." David paused, his eyes filled with a pain Sophia hadn't noticed before. He took a deep breath and stepped closer, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Tried harder? Sophia, do you even hear yourself? Do you know what it's like to go from being respected in the boardroom to being treated like a maid in my own home?" Sophia opened her mouth to respond, but David didn't let her. Years of bottled-up feelings came pouring out. "I never stopped being your husband, Sophia. I just wanted to help us survive. I swallowed my pride. I did everything you asked, even things I never imagined I'd have to do, because I love you, and I love this family. But you didn't just take control, you took my dignity." His words hung in the air, heavy with truth. For the first time, Sophia saw the depth of David's hurt. The nights he spent silently, enduring her harsh words, the moments he bit his tongue to keep the peace, and the quiet sacrifices he made to hold their family together. Her initial defensiveness began to waver, replaced by an ache she couldn't ignore. She looked at David, truly seeing him for the first time in years, the lines on his face, the tiredness in his eyes. These were marks of a man who had given everything, yet received so little in return. "I never meant to make you feel this way," Sophia whispered, her voice breaking. "I thought I was doing what was best for us, but somewhere along the way I lost sight of who we were." David's expression softened, though the pain remained. "You didn't just lose sight of who we were. You lost sight of me, Sophia. And in trying to survive, I almost lost sight of myself." Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes as the reality of his words sank in. She realized that she had been so consumed by her own struggles that she had failed to see the man standing beside her, the man who had endured so much for their family. For the first time in years, they stood in silence, the weight of their shared pain filling the room. But in that silence, something shifted. They weren't just two people fighting anymore. They were two people confronting the truth of their relationship and the love they had nearly lost. "I'm sorry," Sophia said finally, her voice trembling with sincerity. "I've made so many mistakes, David, but I don't want to lose you." David nodded, his own tears falling freely now. "I don't want to lose us either, Sophia, but things have to change." The confrontation between David and Sophia became a catalyst for change. Slowly, the walls they had built to protect themselves began to fall, replaced by a mutual understanding of their shared pain and sacrifices. It wasn't an easy journey, but they were both determined to rebuild not just their relationship, but their lives. David, armed with the confidence he had rediscovered through his blog, stepped up in ways Sophia hadn't expected. His blog, now widely recognized for its honest and heartfelt content, had connected him with a community of readers and influencers who admired his resilience. Through this network, David was introduced to business consultants and strategists, people who could provide valuable insights into Sophia's struggling beauty empire. Sophia, once hesitant to let David back into the fold of decision-making, began to see his worth anew. His strategic mind and innovative ideas, honed during his corporate career, became invaluable assets in restructuring her business. Together, they analyzed market trends, rebranded her products, and introduced new, culturally inspired beauty lines that resonated deeply with their target audience. The collaboration wasn't without its challenges. Old habits and doubts crept in at times, but they leaned on each other, learning to communicate better and trust one another's strengths. The partnership that had once defined their marriage was slowly restored, now stronger and more balanced. The turning point came when David received an invitation to speak at a prestigious business conference. The organizers had been captivated by his blog and wanted him to share his journey of resilience, personal growth, and the importance of partnership. Sophia, proud but humbled, encouraged him to accept the opportunity. At the conference, David stood on stage, his voice steady as he shared his story with an audience of entrepreneurs, leaders, and dreamers. He spoke about his fall from corporate success, the struggles of finding purpose in unexpected places, and the lessons he learned about love and humility. Most importantly, he highlighted the importance of seeing relationships as partnerships where both individuals bring value no matter the roles they play. "Learned that strength isn't about who earns more or who holds power," he said, his gaze scanning the room. "It's about lifting each other up when life gets hard. It's about finding dignity in every role and recognizing the sacrifices we make for the people we love." The audience erupted in applause, moved by David's authenticity and insight. Sophia, sitting in the front row, felt a swell of pride and emotion she hadn't felt in years. For the first time, she saw David not just as her husband, but as a man who had overcome incredible odds to become a source of inspiration. When David stepped off the stage, Sophia embraced him tightly. "You were amazing," she whispered. "Thank you for never giving up on us." The conference marked a new chapter in their lives. Sophia's business began to thrive again, bolstered by the ideas and connections David brought to the table. Together, they became a team in every sense of the word, their love and partnership stronger than ever. In the end, love is not about power, but about partnership, forgiveness, and finding strength in one another. This is the story of David and Sophia, a reminder that even in life's darkest storms, the light of love and resilience can lead us home. Did this story move you? Subscribe for more African tales that inspire, challenge, and captivate your heart. Together, let's celebrate stories of hope, growth, and transformation.